Hello YouTube, Brian LCS here. Thanks for stopping by my channel. In this video, my most iconic, amazing Spider-Man covers. Spider-Man was first introduced in 1962 and over the years has become one of the most popular and recognizable superheroes of all time. Finding success first in comic books and then on TV and then on the big screen. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone who doesn't know who Spidey is. Today we're going to look at Spider-Man's most iconic comic book covers, in a list according to me. But before we get into my top 10 Spidey covers, there are two honorable mentions. First, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 29 from 1965, Never Step on a Scorpion. This is a cover by Steve Ditko, second appearance of the Scorpion, and I just love this cover, this half underwater battle between Spider-Man and the Scorpion, so it makes my almost top 10 list. And the second cover I wanted to recognize is the Amazing Spider-Man number 43 from 1966, Rhino on a Rampage. This is a John Romita Sr. cover. This is in this issue, Peter and Mary Jane have their first date. It is the second appearance of MJ and the origin of the Rhino. And I think if you look at many of the first 100 Amazing Spider-Man covers, many of them could be considered iconic since they often introduced new villains or characters within the Spider-Verse. But now let's get on to our top 10. At number 10, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 316 called Dead Meat. This is a Todd McFarlane cover. And this is when Venom attacks. We see Spidey pinned down with a hulking Venom. It is one of those iconic Venom covers from Todd McFarlane. At number 9, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 347, The Boneyard Hop. This is a cover by Erik Larsen. We can see Venom with the skull. And it's really become kind of a cult favorite in the comic book community. You see, Venom grinning while holding what we think is Spider-Man's skull. And Erik Larsen is one of those underrated Spider-Man artists over the years. He did a number of covers and artwork, but followed Todd McFarlane, so maybe doesn't always get the love that he deserves. At number 8, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 50, Spider-Man No More, from 1967. This is a John Romita Sr. cover, and we can see Peter walking away with the Spidey costume in the alley here. And this has been homaged in one of the Spider-Man films, Spider-Man 2, I believe. And it really is one of those covers that symbolizes Peter's inner struggle with balancing being Spider-Man and Peter Parker. At number 7, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 252, titled Homecoming. This is from 1984. And obviously, this is the first time we've seen the black suit. And it homages Amazing Fantasy 15. This ties into Secret Wars. And this was an historic costume change. Obviously, Spider-Man being as popular as he is and always the red and blue. So this was a big deal back in 1984. At number 6, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 300 from 1988. This classic Todd McFarlane cover. And we've seen it homaged so many times. This is one of those ones that I think people are tired of because we've had so many covers and so many different characters in this pose, in the circle. So on to number 5, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 129, The Punisher Strikes Twice. This is from 1974 and happens to be the first appearance of the Punisher. This is a cover artwork by Gil Kane, and it's a bright yellow cover. You have the target around Spider-Man, Punisher aiming at Spider-Man. And obviously introducing one of the big characters in Marvel, Punisher, who's really grown into his own, just one of those great yellow covers. And for some reason, yellow background covers always stand out. At number 4, we have a twofer. We've got Amazing Spider-Man 121 and 122. It's hard to separate these two because they're just such tied in story. Issue 121, the night Gwen Stacy died, and then issue 122, The Goblin's Last Stand, both from 1973, covers by John Romita Sr. Iconic covers and storylines because Gwen Stacy actually died and stayed dead, which normally doesn't happen in comics. And it was another turning point for Spider-Man, an event that really propelled him into the future and becoming the hero that he did, losing somebody, a loved one so close to him. And I think it marked a turning point in comic book storytelling. Like I said, often main characters, did not die, and so this was one of those, like Uncle Ben, unfortunately, who has stayed dead. At number 3, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 39, How Green Was My Goblin, from 1966. This is a John Romita Sr. cover and one of my all-time favorite Spider-Man covers. Spider-Man, we see Spidey unconscious, Green Goblin flying around with his mask off. Obviously this is an attention grabber, major dramatic tension in this cover, and just the fact that what's going on. Spider-Man is unmasked, his secret identity is revealed, and this actually was John Romita Sr.'s first cover, probably my favorite ASM cover of all time. At number 2, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 33 from 1966, The Final Chapter. This is a cover by Steve Ditko, and it shows Spider-Man trapped under heavy machinery, water pouring on him. So he digs down deep and summons up some strength to get out of the situation, and really kind of stood for what Peter and Spider-Man stood for, right? Kind of beating the odds, when the challenge is even, so difficult that you overcome this. And so just one of those iconic Spider-Man covers. And now on to my number 1 most iconic Amazing Spider-Man cover, which is not an Amazing Spider-Man book. I'm going with Amazing Fantasy 15 from 1962. Like I said, technically not Amazing Spider-Man, but it is the first appearance of Spider-Man, art by Jack Kirby on the cover, and then we actually had Steve Ditko doing the interiors. This is the iconic cover, right, that started it all, Spider-Man swinging with the crook under his arm. And this has been homaged, dozens of times. It defines, Spidey, the character. I take this because of the first appearance and because of the pose on the cover. And as you noticed, Amazing Spider-Man number 1 didn't even make the list because it's really not that great of a cover. And so that's the list of my most iconic Amazing Spider-Man covers. And we'll throw in Amazing Fantasy in there too. But that's the list. Let me know what covers did I miss? What are some of your most favorite iconic Spider-Man covers? And I kind of tried to stick just to Amazing Spider-Man. I didn't want to go down some of the other series, and there's some amazing covers in some of the other series. Spectacular Spider-Man, the Todd McFarlane series, Web of Spider-Man. There are just so many great Spider-Man covers, and even if you go outside of Volume 1 of Amazing Spider-Man, when they did Amazing Spider-Man 800, there were a number of great variant covers that were done, some amazing art. Alex Ross has done some, but these are my top 10. So let me know. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of my picks. What would you sub in? What would you sub out? Leave me a comment and let me know. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next video. Hello YouTube, Brian LCS here. Thanks for stopping by my channel and video. Let me clear my throat.